Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video from Oman Talks NRL SuperCoach. In today's video, I'm going to be doing a round 17 roundup video. Couldn't do a live stream unfortunately on the Sunday afternoon due to other live things getting in the way, but I wanted to still do a weekly wrap up as per usual. So I'm just going to be doing it in recorded format. I will timestamp this. It is currently 4:20 on Sunday, so I am recording during the Rabbitohs Cowboys game. So you may see my live score to the right and be continually changing during the video, but you can see where I currently am at. 8:51. I've got quite a few players in that game with Alex Johnston, Cody Walker, Damien Cook, and then in the Roosters game, I've got Joey Manu, I've got Billy Smith, and I also have Joe Tarpany. So I will do those games once I'm able to get back home later tonight and wrap up those. But in the meantime, I thought I would still wrap up the other games that have happened to date. And we also have had a few updates come in as well. But as always, do give the video a like if you do enjoy it. So starting off with the first game that occurred on Friday, an absolute smashing by the Warriors, 48-18 over the Dragons. I think overall the Warriors are just looking pretty amazing, just very, very slick in attack, but just very gritty in defense as well. Murata Nyakore was sin-binned in the first half, and the Warriors held up their own in terms of defense. They were a little bit sloppy in the first half as well. Second half, though, they really came out firing and piled on the points. But really, the story of that game was Dallin Watene-Zelezniak and Chance Klukstad, as well as SJ, all going big with big 100-plus point games. I mean, Watene-Zelezniak has been on a bit of a tear recently. I mean, prior to this game, there were scores of 128, 85, 50, 52. There was a 29 last week, but he has had some big scores this season, and obviously scoring 4 tries really does help that. So really big score from him. He's going to get very, very expensive now, but congrats to any DWZ owners. Getting on to the next abbreviated player, CNK, Chance Klukstad. He has been absolutely killing it. Anyone who's had him for the last kind of month or so, you would be absolutely laughing with how good he's been going. Scores of 94, 103, 84, and now 148. Obviously very helped out by the very poor defense of the Dragons. And a quick shout out as well to SuperCoach Guns, and he does post like every week a try map. The Dragons' left edge defense has been really, really poor for the entirety of the season. I really wish I would have known that information probably coming ahead into this week. Now, I probably wouldn't have bought DWZ as a result, but it was something that was a kind of a trend that had happened over the season, and it was even more exaggerated this week with DWZ and CNK absolutely tearing it up on their right side, targeting that Dragons left side. This is going to be important as well. Next week, they do come up against the Sharks. So if you're a Sione Katoa owner, Jesse Ramian, Britton Nico Hines down that side, that could really benefit. So if you own some of those guys, definitely going to be holding on to, or if you're looking for trade targets next week, maybe those are a few guys that you can look to get you can trade them in and start off with a bang, potentially targeting that weak side of the Dragons. But yeah, SJ, again, a fantastic performance from him. He just keeps killing it. Scored a try, a couple of try assists in there as well. One maybe a little bit fortuitous where he put in a grubber and it was Bailey Sirinen who scored, which looked a little bit questionable in terms of the put down. But look, as an SJ trader in and a VCR, I'm happy with that. I did take the vice captain points as well because I had only 17 players, so I was going to get an auto emergency in any case. So I took those points. He was on 105, updated slightly up to 112. Just keeps on killing it. There's definitely an argument where SJ could just be a run-home halfback. I think it really comes down to the health of Cleary and how he looks on his return. But SJ, the way that he's going, the way the Warriors are going, if you had to hold him for the rest of the season, I think you'd be doing just fine. And the run home for the Warriors, not in the next few weeks, but for the rest, kind of the latter end of the season, is really, really good. So I really like Warriors players. Nico Klukstad is going to get very, very expensive. Prior to updates, he had CNK having a 15 break even next week and going up in 97k. So he is going to be quite expensive next week. So whether you jump on is going to be a question mark. But to be honest, the 5 weeks that he's got, it's not been a fluke that he's been scoring this well. I think his role is really different to what I was seeing from the Raiders. He is becoming that sweeping fullback, and with the Warriors attack looking so good, he generally is firming up as a close to, maybe not a must-have, but definitely a gun keeper in the center wing position that you can keep, or you can look to trade in as a keeper for the run home. So really like CNK. DWZ, he has put up some good scores, but I don't know if I'd read too much into that 175 in the sense that they're not going to verse the Dragons every week, but he has put up good scores, so it's definitely not a fluke for him. And SJ has just been absolutely killing it. Other shout-outs as well to some other good performance from the Warriors. Adam Fanua-Blake, I know he's a bit expensive at over 700k, but generally is a top 4 front row forward as well. 93 points, did get a try assist for SJ's try through the offload, so he was really good. Jackson Ford did score a try against his old club, so 74 points, which is good for any holders out there. I was keen on holding him if you were a Ford owner, just particularly for this matchup. And if you played him, obviously you'd be very happy with that 74 points this week. Tohu Harris has had a bit of quite a couple of weeks, 46 last week, 56 this week after updates. I still think he's someone that you can look to have maybe as a top 4 front row forward, but I think at a pinch, let's say post-Origin, if you needed to trade in someone like a Tino or a Payne Haas, he's maybe potentially the guy that you could look to sell, but he has been looking decent in attack as well. He was looking to offload a little bit more. He wasn't actually getting the offloads, but just watching the game, it did look like he had that ability to offload a few times, and that can always lead to attacking opportunities plus the extra offload points with SuperCoach. So Tohu, definitely not a must sell, but he's not quite hitting the numbers that we would have hoped for, but it looks as though those attacking stats could be on the way in the future. So happy to hold Tohu for the time being. On the Dragon side of things, to be honest, there's not a lot of interest in, like, personally for any of the Dragons options, just the way the whole controversy and stuff around Ben Hunt, you just don't know what's going to happen, I guess, there. And just overall, none of their options really stand out. Jacob Little maybe as a hooker option, 66 points again this week. So he's had a couple of decent scores. Tyrell Sloan again decent with 66 points. He did have a couple of moments where he looked really good, similar to that really great performance he had against the Roosters on Anzac Day. But he's just way too inconsistent for my liking. I still don't like him, to be honest, as a trade-in. So I'm not really too hot, to be honest, on any of the Dragons players. Jack DeBellin, if you own him, 59 points, it's solid enough. You take that. But whether I'm going to invest new in a lot of these guys, probably a very low chance of that. Moving on to the Parramatta Eels and Dolphins game. So Parramatta, kind of the opposite of what happened with the Warriors game. They had a very, very strong first half, but not as good of a second half. Pretty much the Warriors did the exact opposite. So the 48-20 scoreline does, kind of make the Dolphins look like they were a little bit better this game. But that first half, 42 points to 4 from the Eels. When the Eels are on, there's probably no other team in the comp that is maybe as downhill as they are. Maybe Manly is up there as, where they've got the momentum, they just start piling on the points. But the Eels, with their really great back rowers, ability to offload, you've got Gutherson and Moses popping around, good centre wings as well, like in Bailey Simonson and Will Penasini. When they're on, they're a serious attacking juggernaut. So you can see, obviously, in scoring 42 points in the first half, a lot of great scores there from, Clint Gutherson, ended up scoring a double as well as a try assist. So he's just been, I got him a few weeks ago, but anyone who traded him in about 3 weeks ago, you've gotten 300s in a row. You'd be ecstatic with that. He had a negative break even coming into this week. He's going to be even more expensive. He was about 780k, going to probably go up into the 800s. Whether you trade, he's not going to be a trade in round 18, given that the Eels have the bye. But, post that, he, with Latrell, it's been confirmed during the week that he won't be playing again until round 21. It looks as though the Rabbitohs are putting him on ice, just going to keep it very conservative with him. Tom Trbojevic out for the rest of the season. That fullback position really does open up. You've got Reece Walsh there, who had a bit of a down game against the Titans, which we'll get onto in a little bit. But Gutherson, 300s in a row, like he's showing that ceiling that probably was the knock against him of the past few seasons, where he was very solid, get you the 60 to 70, 75, but just seemed to lack that, that upside. He's getting that upside. I think without Dillbags in that team, he's really taking a greater role in attack, and I think that's really helping him out. So I know he's very expensive, but to be honest, post the bye, plays round 19, plays round 20 as well. I think he's definitely someone that if you wanted to view as a season-long fullback keeper, I think still probably fine to trade in. I'm very happy with Gutherson. Mitch Moses as well had a really great game. Lots of points in goal kicking. His goal kicking radar was definitely on. I did advise people, if you had Moses, don't sell to SJ just because it was a good matchup. So I'm glad that at least that advice paid off and that Moses also turned up. With the round 18 bye, it does become a bit of a question mark what you do with him, because if you expect him to play game 3, he'll be out for round 18 and for round 19. And when you've got someone with like SJ right there, who's put in another ton, who will play all the games up until round 22, I can see Moses to SJ being a fairly popular trade next week. And to be honest, I think if you've got those trades where you can go Moses to SJ, maybe back to Cleary, I don't mind that trade, to be honest, because even though Moses is definitely firming up as a top 3 or 4 halfback as well for SuperCoach. Missing 2 of the next 3 if that does happen, or just missing the next 2, in a halfback spot where you've got Jerome Hughes doing well, SJ doing very well. I can see one single trade there couldn't pocket you potentially 150 points. It's a move that I can definitely see merit in. So that is definitely something I would consider if you are a Moses owner coming into the bye next week. But if you need to hold him, no issues as well, because when he's playing, he seems to be delivering now when the Eels are especially good in attack. Jermaine Hopgood absolutely kills me again. I can't believe I don't own Jermaine Hopgood, and I still somehow own Matt Drury in my squad. Never should have sold Hopgood. I mean, the first half was absolutely killer. Try assist, line break assist for Andrew Davey. Then he scores a try of his own, and he was on about 80 after about 25 minutes, and I thought this could be anything. Fortunately, to be honest, after that first half, only getting 105 as a non-owner, thinking what could be like 140, I'll take the 105. But, I traded in Madison this week. If you were listening to my round 17 lockout Q&A, I was kind of umming and ahhing between Madison and Payne Haas. I ended up going Madison because even though round 18 is the bye, I should be able to cover him that week. And I wanted that round 19 number. And I also wanted that round 20 coverage, and I think Madison should be playing for both of those games. I did sell Dream Buller to Ryan Madison as well. With Payne Haas, because I was losing a round 19 guy in Buller, I wanted to still keep the round 19 guy, plus round 20. That's the week after, that's the round after State of Origin Game 3. Could be a lot of Origin players getting rested, so I kind of wanted to get the guy who I thought had a good chance of playing that week. So that's the reason why I ended up going Madison. I did consider Hopgood briefly as well, but I thought with Hopgood's ownership, let me try take the pod route. That clearly hasn't worked in my favor this week, and that's probably a good lesson for myself. Like, sometimes maybe we don't need to overthink about choosing the lower owned guy when we're trying to chase rank. Maybe just you're better off sometimes just picking the guy who's been proving it all season, and Hopgood has been doing that when he gets the minutes. So a bit of hindsight, I guess, there, but look, hopefully Madison can deliver. I mean, he was good in his minutes there. He was very close to getting an attacking stat as well. When Gutherson scored his second try, Madison was right there for an offload from Gutho. So I was a little bit annoyed at Gutherson, but look, I'll take the Gutherson points in any case. Other good performances all across the park though. Will Penasini with a double. He's been a really solid option all season. Dejan Arce has just been really good ever since he's come into the role as well. He's been really, really solid. 91 points from him, really good game there. Bryce Cartwright, I mean, I can't believe that I went Matt Dury over Bryce Cartwright in the preseason in round 1, because Cartwright is forming to be like a genuine just hold. If you've got him in your second or forward, it's just great depth. He gets those attacking stats when he can offload, and he's just been so consistent all season. So 84 points from him. Bailey Simonson, again, has been another option who's done very well over the last few weeks. So I think the Eels, when they're in this attacking mode, they definitely have a lot of options that you can consider. Obviously, the round 18 bye, you're probably not going to invest new, but definitely someone who you can consider for the run home. Do take note, though, that their end-of-season draw isn't fantastic, and they do have another bye after round 18 as well, but the Eels definitely look like they've got their mojo back. Then look, they're not going to be versing the Dolphins every week. They still have some decent games coming up. I know in round 20, they've got the Titans. Round 19 is the Warriors, which is obviously a little bit tough. But yeah, you really like the look of the Eels there, and that's why I was kind of also happy to buy someone like a Ryan Madison with the hope that he's got really good base stats, plus he has that attacking upside as well, hopefully. On the Dolphin side of things, obviously a lot better second half, but it really was the first half that killed him this week. Hamiso Tabuai-Fidow scored a double, did score a try very, very late on in the game, which definitely boosted his score. Just seems to be that guy, though. I think that, very popular beginning of the season. A lot of people sold when I think he had kind of looked like he'd peaked in price, but he kept on keeping on. Just seems to be that guy that, despite what his team is performing like I should say, he just seems to be someone who can still deliver points, get those tries. He's gotten a lot of long-range tries, which can kind of come from anything. So his team doesn't necessarily need the field position. So I don't know if I view him as a top 7 center wing, but if you've got him, perfectly fine hold. And maybe you can look to go him as a bit of a pod, but center wing position is stacked, so definitely not firming as a must-buy. Jermaine Osako probably is in that top 7 center wing. Well-beaten team, still managed to get 67 points, which I'm very happy with. Did get a try assist, I think, for Valence Tavare. So look, the draw coming up for the Dolphins, it's not the easiest. They've got the Broncos in round 18. They've got the Titans in round 19. Look, to be fair, the Titans in round 19, that will be a team without Dave Fafita and Tino Fasumala-Awi. Round 20, then it's the Panthers. Look, Panthers could rest a lot of their Origin players, but we even saw this week against the Knights that Panthers, without their Origin stars, still a very, very good team. Then he has the bye in round 21. So Osako, despite having the good score, he did have a break-even of 83 coming into this week. So I think there is a chance that he still loses a bit of money. And I think for me, if you don't own Osako, I think for me, the strategy would be to try to target him in round 21, when the run home for the Dolphins is really good. Bulldogs, Knights, Roosters, Tigers, Cowboys, and then Warriors. Pretty good run there to end the season, and he will be someone I think that you will want to own in your CT dub. So really happy with the performance from Osako, 67 in a well-beaten side, but I think definitely wouldn't be investing new right now. Round 21, though, I think he definitely will be a guy you do want to have. Valence Tavare, 56 points, did score a try. The only reason that I wasn't too keen on buying him this week was just the uncertainty around Branko Lee and his injury, but Tavare could be still someone that you want to go downgrade to. Did score the try, so 56 points, pretty solid outing from him. And to be honest, there's probably not a lot of other relevant players, I guess, out of the Dolphins. I mean, Connolly Lemuelu, obviously benched, was a bit of a shock, or a bit of a blow, I should say, for any owners of him coming into this week. Only did the 35 points. He did have 100 break even, so he is going to lose quite a bit of cash. So maybe he is someone that, look, if that still continues to happen when he's coming off the bench, does play round 19, but he will start bleeding a lot of money, so maybe it is worth looking to upgrade him next week if you have got the cash, or you can make it work. Britton Nickera against the Dragons should be a really great matchup there, so potentially that's something that you can look to maybe move off and upgrade Lemuelu to. Outside of that, though, probably not too much other relevance, I guess, out of the Dolphins and Eels game. So next game was the Panthers taking on the Knights, 20 points to 12 for Penrith. Again, just showing that without their origin stars, their defense is still watertight, only conceding 12 points. I mean, the defense is just unreal. Quickly touching on some of the Penrith players, not a lot of, I guess, Supercoach relevant in the sense that a lot of the origin players were out, but Tyrone Peachey has been a really great cheapie for anyone who got him a few weeks ago. He's got the dual status. I think hopefully if you were able to be fluid with your trades, you were able to find out that Hosking, Peachey were all going to play after all the origin stars got rested. And I think with a good matchup against the Newcastle Knights, I'm hopeful that most of you would have played him. And 103 points, really big outing from him. Scored a double, good base stats, scored a try assist as well. So really all around great game from Tyrone Peachey. Scott Sorensen, to be honest, I think I need to probably just start recognizing him as potentially a top 6 second row forward. Keeps on getting it done. It feels like Isaiah Papali'i of like a few seasons ago, where we were just like, surely he can't keep this up. And he just seems to manage to do so. 76 points from him, very, very solid outing from him. He is very expensive. I believe he is north of 700,000. Yes, he was 703k coming into this week with an 84 break even. So look, he's not going to go down that much in price. He'll be in the high 600s. Look, maybe he's an option for you if you want to go a little bit pod in the second row forward. He doesn't cover round 19. But look, round 20, again, the Panthers have shown their hand a couple of times now that they are willing to rest their origin players. So Scott Sorensen will be pretty solid for minutes, I think, during those bye weeks, or those weeks, I should say, directly after origin. Even then, it feels like he did win the role on merit, even prior to having all those origin players go out for origin duties. So Sorensen could be someone that you can consider. Jack Cogger, look, probably not an option, give that Cleary will come back eventually, but he's just been really solid for them since he's moved into that team. Dylan Edwards, again, very solid outing from him. Kind of bread and butter of Edwards, one attacker stat in the try, and just really solid work rate to get to 73 points. A lot of people would have been maybe tossing up between Edwards, maybe like a Will Kennedy and a Gutherson in the last few weeks. Gutherson has obviously been the one who's come out on top. Edwards probably just behind him. The fact that he doesn't cover round 19 probably means I wouldn't invest in Edwards. I think ideally if you're making a fullback who plays round 19, it would probably be Kennedy or Gutherson. And I think I'd go to Gutherson just with the way that his role looks to be without Dylan Brown in the side. Even though he'll be much more expensive than Kennedy, I think he's just showing that he has that ceiling on him. Don't forget as well in round 19, if Moses is out for Origin, Gutherson will be goal kicking. So again, that's just another thing that will add to him being potentially a good fullback option. But if you want to go slightly pod route, it could be Dylan Edwards. Fullback does feel like a position where you can maybe go a little bit different now with Latrell not being back until round 21 and potentially maybe not being, his output might be reduced since then. Or should I say, after round 21 when he comes back, his output could be a little bit reduced. We just don't quite know yet how he'll return from performance. And then Tom Trbojevic is obviously out for the season, unfortunately. Other good solid performances, Isaac Dungo, he's been really good since his comeback. He had a 90, I think, a few weeks ago or last week, 68 again this week, so solid. Doesn't probably have that really high ceiling of some of the other center wings, but if you want like a real solid option, he kind of feels like a Will Penasini mold to me in the sense that he's never going to get you a bad score like a 40-50, and he has that ability to get those attacking stats to get up to like the 70s and the 80s. Outside of that, though, probably not too many other relevant players. I mean, Zach Hosking, obviously 51 points, 52, I should say. You'll obviously take that in a week where we thought we would be a lot of players, and especially with Hosking when he was originally named out of the 17. He is probably someone, though, that you can look to move on, I think. Round 20, he still could be a handy number because you expect maybe Liam Martin gets a rest, Isaiah Yeo gets a rest. But still, I think eventually Hosking will be someone that you will look to upgrade. I don't think he's going to be a genuine run-home guy. I like potentially upgrading him to someone like a Britton Nikora, for example, if that's a trade that you can do. Even like a Olukwatu, who we'll get to in the next game. Olukwatu scored 81 points, but it is a trend where Olukwatu, when Turbo is not in the team, his stats improve because Cherry Evans looks to him more as an attacking option. So again, here's another second row forward option that you can consider. And I know Olukwatu is not too much more expensive than Hosking, so that could be an upgrade that you could consider as well. Finally, on the Panthers, Sunia Turuva I own, 39 points, which is solid, pretty much all in base and tackle bust and whatnot, but just didn't get those major attacking stats. He was close on a couple of occasions. So for me, I'm not really looking at him as a solid sell at this point. I think I'm probably just going to hold until the time comes when I feel like maybe I need to upgrade him. But for now, he's doing a solid job. I don't think I need to rush to sell. And being the left winger for a really strong attacking outfit in the Panthers, it's never a bad guy, I think, to own in your team. Moving quickly on to the Newcastle Knights, really happy with the two guys who I have in Marzu and Ponga. I wasn't expecting a lot out of these guys, given that Penrith are just Penrith. Marzu coming out with 68 points, mainly in work rate, was really great to see. Marzu, I do think, is someone that if you don't own, he could be a genuine run-home centre wing keeper, because I've spoken about it a little bit in the last week or so, but I really do like the Knights run-home. He's got the Bulldogs in round 18, which is obviously a fantastic matchup. Bye in round 19. But for the run home, you've got, so basically from round 20 onwards, you've got the Tigers, Melbourne, Canberra, Dolphins, Bulldogs, Rabbitohs, Sharks, and the Dragons. So it's a bit of a mixed bag. Their last month, though, is all at home at Mount Smart Stadium. So, I'm looking at games like the Dragons in round 27, Bulldogs in round 24. Just for the rest of the season, I think he will be solid option. He will be up about the 700k after this week's performance, so he is pretty expensive. You could look to maybe instead of him go like a Nickel Klukstad if you want that round 19 number. But if you're already got Nickel Klukstad, for example, and you're looking for a centre wing keeper, I do think Marzu is in that category. Outside of that, only a couple of other guys above 60 in Frizzell and Hastings, but probably not guys who I think on a consistent enough basis will get you those kind of scores. So probably wouldn't be looking there too much. Really, I think the only other options are maybe like a Dane Gagai, maybe a Dom Young as a pod in the centre wing position. I mean, Gagai, to be fair, didn't really have the best of games. Still ended up scoring 51. That's kind of the flaw that he has. He's been averaging like 40 in base. So Gagai is still definitely a good pod to consider if you want to go against Marzu. I like Marzu just being the winger. I think the wingers just tend to do a little bit better. And he's probably got similar floor to Gagai. So I think his ceiling, equal floor, but probably higher ceiling. Still makes me think Marzu's the guy, but Gagai still could be a good pod. And Ponga, look, 47 points. He did score a try early in the game, which was good. Nothing really outside of that, though. But look, 47 points is not the worst against Penrith. And then the Bulldogs next week in round 18. Look, he could be a genuine captaincy option next week, potentially. So I still think Ponga is definitely worth a consideration for a trade-in. If you need the round 19 number, you probably have to give it a miss until afterwards. But I'm very happy to be a Ponga owner for next week against the Bulldogs. I think that could be a matchup where he does score very, very well. And so rounding out the Saturday games, we've got the Melbourne Storm versus the Manly Sea Eagles, kind of the old traditional rivalry, the battle at Brookie, all that kind of good stuff. 24 points to 6 though from the Storm in the end. Will seem to be a pretty comfortable win. I don't know, let me know in the comments as well, guys, but I don't know, I didn't find this game overly interesting, if I'm being honest. I was probably like a bit tired from footy because we had the Wednesday State of Origin, then Friday, and then had 2 games on Saturday. So by the time I got to the third one, I was like, okay, I think I'm ready for a bit of a break here to maybe watch a movie or something. So I kind of found myself zoning in and out of this game. But obviously some Supercoach relevance here for sure. We've already briefly mentioned Olukwatu. Look, I did briefly consider Olukwatu as a trade-in for my second row forward, but again, I was probably just a little bit put off, I think, by his overall performances for the rest, like kind of not really the beginning of the season, because he was quite good. Just the kind of middle half just didn't seem to really be putting it together so much. And he was 520k, and I thought, oh, he's that price for a reason. Do I really think he's going to have an upturn? And I did recognize that, look, without Turbo, he is a better option, but didn't pull the trigger on that. Obviously, he did get an early try in the game off a kick, so no line break with that. And then he did also get at the very, very end, like we're talking last 40 seconds, he did get a line break, which did come in with a few tackle busts. So if you take away that last minute junk, he probably would have ended up on about 60, 65, including a try. Granted, the try was off a kick, So probably looking at about 48 base power, which is fine. It's a little bit lower than what I would have hoped for, but it's been definitely higher than what he's probably had in the last few weeks previously. And I think a lot of that is just due to the lack of turbo. Cherry Evans is the primary playmaker, and he uses Olukwatu a lot. So I do think that if you are looking for a bit of a pod in the second row forward, I believe Olukwatu is still sub 10% ownership, or not that much higher. He is definitely someone, I think, if you're looking for a second row forward upgrade who's not too expensive, if you're looking to move on the likes of a Hosking, for example, I think Olukwatu could be someone that you can consider. 81 points, pretty good performance, especially in a tough game away to Melbourne. Ruben Garrick, so obviously a bit of a surprise to me, but he was playing at fullback during this game, and apparently I've heard some quotes as well that apparently he was said on, I think, ABC Grandstand or on the radio or somewhere in the pre-game coverage that he'll be looking to play fullback for the run home for the rest of the season. Now, this is great news as Garrick owners, because I think playing at centre doesn't really offer you the same opportunities as the fullback. Fullback just tends to make more runs, more involved in the attacking plays. So 62 points without any major attacking stats is a really great performance from Garrick. So there were some question marks about him coming into this week without Tommy Turbo, but if it is true that he is going to be playing fullback for the run home, I think he's a good option to look. He's very expensive, 780k, and he did have a very high break even coming into this week. I do distinctly remember Jay Schubert on Twitter. He said that Garrick's predicted break even was like in the 170s. Now that was before updates, but even with updates, it's still probably going to be like 150 break even next week. Manly don't play round 19 either. And with round 18 against the Roosters, it feels like a matchup you don't need to go, I think, investing in Garrick. So if you're a non-owner, I'd probably wait and hope that his price goes down a little bit. And even the Cowboys in round 20 is not fantastic. Sharks in round 21 could be okay. But then you've got Dragons round 22, Roosters round 23, Penrith 24, Warriors 25. So to be honest, the draw for the run home isn't that amazing. So maybe there's an argument that you do antipod Garrick. But if he is playing at fullback, goal kicking, I still think he's going to be a solid option. So I wouldn't be put off, I guess, by the tough draw. I mean, look, scored 62 points against Melbourne without any major attacking stats. So he's got a pretty good floor on him. The last two rounds, though, Bulldogs and Tigers, last 2 weeks of the season, those are definitely games that I think you'll be wanting to own Ruben Garrick. So for me, I still think he is a genuine gun season keeper. But if you're a non-owner, I probably wouldn't be investing new for a few rounds. But if you're an owner like myself, I think definite hold if he is playing at fullback for the rest of the season. Probably not too many other relevant players, I guess, out of Manly. I mean, Taniela Paseka has been solid at front row forward, but I think now is a time in the season where you probably want to be targeting like a Tarpany, Tohu, Corey Horsburgh, Payne Haas post-Origin, then probably a Tino post-Origin as well. So I don't feel like he's someone that I'd be investing in. And really not too many other options. I mean, we'll quickly chat about Josh Schuster. Definitely think it's you can definitely move on Schuster. I think just doesn't have the base stats, only 21 points after updates. Didn't really seem to be that threatening in attack either. Now look, it's a tough game against Melbourne, granted. Not as must sell, I guess, if you just want to have some depth in your back row. But again, he's a candidate where if you've got him in your second row forward, you could upgrade him to Olukwatu, for example, or maybe some. There's not a lot of other second row forwards, to be honest, around his price range. So you'll probably have to try to find some funds from elsewhere. But yeah, he probably is firming up as a sell. I'm struggling to think about how I'll look to get rid of him. If I can't, I might just not force it. I might just leave him there. But yeah, definitely someone who I think, as much as you can, unless it's a good matchup, I wouldn't be playing in my 17 most weeks, put it that way. Very quickly on the Melbourne Storm, in the end, pretty good performance from them. Xavier Coates scored a double. He had a minus 18 break-even coming into this week as well, so he's definitely going to make a lot of money with that 100-plus point game. I'm expecting him to be a somewhat popular trade-in, just given that he scored 100. But look, obviously, we know with Xavier Coates, he is a bit rocks and diamonds. He can give you these games, but he can also equally give you like those 10, 15-point games as well. So now that he's going to go up in price a lot, he's not even probably in cheapy territory either. So I feel like if you haven't got in Coates, I don't view him as a top 7 centre wing, and nor do I view him as a guy who will make you a considerable amount of money. But I don't mind, he will be maybe about 420k, let's guess that, after lockout. And if you've got a centre wing there, like maybe a Billy Smith who you can upgrade to, potentially you could do that. Although you could equally just hold Billy Smith, for example, or you could downgrade one of your other guys maybe to Xavier Coates. But I don't think I'd be reading too much into that game. Nelson Asafa-Solomona, really good game from him, 88 points. That did include a try, and from memory, he spent some time on the edge, where for Supercoach purposes is good because he's more likely to get those attacking stats. So he obviously benefited there. Jerome Hughes has been really solid the last few weeks, 84 points. He had a few tries this year off the boot. So he's looking, if you traded him in a few weeks ago, you'd be pretty happy with that. Probably not a season keeper. I still think SJ is ahead of him just with the goal kicking. I think that just makes me prefer SJ. I do think Moses is also above him on an average point of view. I guess the benefit of Jerome Hughes is that after round 19, I don't believe the Melbourne Storm have any more buys for the rest of the season. So it could be something that you could hang on to. But I think if you own Hughes, he's probably doing the perfect job that you would have hoped for. He's putting in some good scores during this whole Origin period, going up in price and value, and eventually should be a nice stepping stone back to someone like a Cleary. So I think if you haven't got him now, probably wouldn't be investing new with that round 19 buy, but he's probably doing a solid job for you. I mean, Will Warbrick, 80 points again. He's put together a couple of really big scores. So if you've held on Warbrick to this point, congratulations. You're going to make a lot of money out of him. You could generally keep him as a run home option just for depth, or he could just be a very easy stepping stone to like a Sarko, for example, after the round 20 matchup that Asako has. So potentially that could be a move that you could do, but yeah, you're a very happy Warbrick holder to this point. Shout out to Christian Welch, by the way, as well. Haven't been playing him for the last few weeks, but he comes out and bangs out 72 in the week that I do need him. He was my automatic emergency as well, so getting 72 points there was lovely. So thank you, Christian, for your services. I wouldn't be buying him, but if you're an owner like me, I've generally considered just holding him for the rest of the season, just as some depth, because front row forward, it's a position that doesn't have too much upside. You can't get hurt too much. So if Christian Welch is there, at a pinch, I can play him if I need to. So look, I'll happily take those 72 points this week, though. Very quickly, though, kind of a couple of underperformers from Melbourne. So one, Harry Grant. Only the 45 points, no major attacking stats for him. He made 44 tackles, but he did miss 8 tackles. So his 45 points were really all in base when you included his runs. No Cam Munster. Obviously, I should have mentioned that Munster was rested coming into this week. So that obviously didn't help out the Storm overall with their attacking opportunities. But yeah, I don't know. Grant had that really good game last week, but he's had more of these kind of games than that 100 plus that we saw last week. So I don't know. I still think he is a run home hooker, but when I'm seeing performances like this and scores like this, I'm happy at the moment to not be look, I'd rather own him than not own him, put it this way, but I'm not getting hurt by him too much at this point. So he probably will be someone I will look to eventually get back to post-Origin, but at the moment, no real rush for me. I know a lot of people would have jumped on him this week with Jeremy Marshall-King being ruled out again. Sorry, I should have mentioned that in the Dolphins game. But look, if you own Grant, you're not going to be selling, I think, at this point, but yeah, the score's a little bit concerning. He's not quite hitting those performances that we saw at the very beginning of the season. We did see this, though, I guess, last season. Probably not as drastic, but during the Origin period, obviously, body's not probably 100%, minutes are getting managed, whatnot. But for the run home, when all the Origin stuff was clear, guys like Munster and Grant were killing it. So I think I don't want to read too much into what's happening now, given that it's happening in the middle of all this Origin period and whatnot. I think post-Origin, knowing what Grant did last year, yeah, look, I'll probably want to get him back for the run home, knowing that he's just going to be good for minutes for the run home. Another slight underperformer, Nick Meaney. He's kind of gone off the boil a little bit, only 43 points. So if you're not an owner of Meaney, he probably isn't firming up at this stage as a trade-in. If you're going for a centre wing instead, I'd probably look to someone like a Sarko in a few weeks' time. Really like the Sharks players. Sharks have got a pretty good draw coming up and a great matchup in round 18 against the Dragons. So for much cheaper, Sione Katoa, you could target that Dragons left edge defense. And yeah, Meaney at this point, if you're not an owner, I'd probably say happy enough at this stage to not go for it at this point. But yeah, I think if you own him, you wouldn't be selling him. But yeah, some slightly lower scores in the last couple of weeks. But he is the goal kicker for the Melbourne Storm, so I think it's still probably worth hanging on to him, knowing that in the Storm run home, if you've got guys like Munster, Grant, all firing, as the goal kicker, he'll be doing just fine. So I wouldn't sell him, but probably wouldn't be buying either. Now, the first game of Sunday, Broncos versus Titans, probably, if it was like for any of you and like me, probably was one of the games that made your tipping round not become a perfect round because, I fully expected the Broncos to win this game playing at Suncorp, but the Titans, to be fair, in the derby, really aimed up and played very well. Obviously, the biggest talking point out of this is Dave Fifita, 116 points, scored a try just at the very end of the first half, and then beginning of the second half, gets a try assist, and I'm thinking, You moron. Why did you sell Fafita last week? And he comes out and bangs 116. Now, look, he will go down in price because he had like 160 break even or something, but this probably does stop for a little bit any major cash loss, which is not what I wanted as a non-owner, and hoping for him to drop in price to pick him back cheap. Now, very, very end of the game, he did look to pick up something like look like a knee or an ankle injury, but he did then play out the rest of the game. So obviously, I'll wait and see what NRL Physio says. But the fact that he got back up eventually and played out the rest of the game, and in those last few minutes, it didn't really seem that hampered. It seems as though Fafita is going to be okay. So obviously, if you're still held onto Fafita, you'd be very happy about that. He will be I think he'll be my number one priority post Origin. It'll be either him or Cleary. With Cleary, the fact that I've got SJ and Hines probably means that I can maybe afford to give Cleary a game or two. Although I know that Cleary does have, I think in round 20 or round 21, the Bulldogs. I'll be very scared, I think, to not have Cleary that week. But round 20, even off a few days turnaround, I think they play a Sunday game again after game 3. Round 20 could be a week where, look, if it looks like Fafita is looking to play 80 minutes, he's probably going to be one of the guys who I think I'll just be terrified not owning. It was a hard watch today, not having him, and seeing him get 116, that wasn't the best. So I definitely want to be getting Fafita back. I'll probably now, with my main 4 back rows being John Bateman, Ryan Madison, Jacob Preston, and Britton Nikora. Look, Nikora and Bateman for me are probably the 2 guys who will stay there. I don't think I'll be looking to sell either. Probably Madison as well now that I've traded him in. But it'll be either one of Madison or Preston who I look to maybe upgrade back up to Fafita. Preston's been solid, but he probably won't be. He's like Fafita's like no other second row forward, I guess, in SuperCoach. So he's definitely someone who I will be looking to target for the run home, and it'll probably be via one of Madison or Preston. Very quickly on some of the other guys who played very well. Brian Kelly, Camperero played very well, scoring some tries. Camperero just seems to hang around and just get these good scores every now and then, but I assume most of us have probably sold to this point. Mo Fodawaker had a really good game as well, backing up from Origin. AJ Brimson was a bit of a pod that a lot of people were looking at potentially in the 5'8" or the fullback spot. Came out with 57, didn't really have any major attacking stats in this game. Sorry, let me correct that. He did have a try assist actually, but still 57 points. You'll be happy with that. Like, look, only scored 18 points, and the Broncos have been a really good defense. So Brimson in his 80-minute games this year, he was averaging 68 coming into this week. It's probably dipped down to 65 or something with this 57. So there's nothing wrong with how he's scoring when he plays good minutes. So I think at his really good price, he was like 520k coming into this week. He is still definitely someone that you can look to consider in the 5'8" or fullback spot. Fullback, probably, I still feel like there are a lot of other guys I'd look to get above him. I do think Latrell, if he comes back and looks anywhere near 100%, probably will be the guy I think a lot of us will want to get.
Found this on the web.
Sorry about that. That's bloody Siri just wanting to chime in there. I don't think Siri was talking about Latrell Mitchell though. But Latrell will probably be the number one guy, I think, fullback, if he looks like he's returned to fitness. Gutherson's killing it. Edwards is a good option. Will Kennedy could be a pod in the run home. Reece Walsh obviously had a down game this week with only 26 points, but he has been good all season up until this point as well. So he could be an option. So fullback, I'm not sure if I'd get Brimson, and even 5'8". Munster, I think, will be a guy you want. Walker, I think, is going to be the guy that you want. Ponga, I think, is probably, I'm still ranking him above Brimson. So I can see the pod factor in Brimson, but I don't know, in my head, I still think that there are a lot of other guys who I'd prefer above him. So look, the way that my team is set up, I've got Ponga and Cody at 5'8". I've got Gutherson, and now I've shifted Garrick down to my center wing. So I could upgrade one of my center wings maybe to Brimson, but it doesn't feel like a move that I have to do. So for me, probably not going to be someone I'll trade in, but he has been solid to this point. Philip Sammy, 53 points. He's a bit of a pod that some people I know have messaged me about. He's had some good scores in the last kind of 8 or 9 rounds, to be fair. Apart from his first 2 weeks of the season, he's actually been pretty solid, going pretty safe. Like, he gets 50 plus most weeks and has that ability to get a 70, 80. He is a bit more try reliant to get to those 70s, 80s, but look, the Titans have no more bias for the rest of the season, so he's a guy that you can just plug in and know that you'll get a game out of him every week, barring injury. And there seems to be one Titans back who gets dropped every other week, but Phil Sammy looks to be the one who's a bit immune to that. So maybe he's a pod option to consider, but personally, probably not for me. Just doesn't feel like he has that 100 plus point game in him. Outside of that, though, don't think there's a lot of other players from the Titans to talk about. Tino was a very late scratching this week, so I think if you're umming and ahhing between Tino or Haas, that you probably had your decision made for you and going Payne Haas. But Tino is still someone we'll definitely want to target, I think, for the run home. On the Broncos side of things, just not quite clicking in attack. Pat Carrigan had a great game, 76 points. That did come with a try assist though, so the score was a little bit inflated there. Now, I am recording this slightly after the game. I'll see if there's any potential report or suspension that will happen with Carrigan on that tackle on Fafita. No report happened during the game, but you never know what the match review committee will decide for themselves. So Carrigan may be a risk, but we'll see about that. I don't think he's heavily owned in any case. Tom Flegler scored a try, so 65 points. So that obviously boosted his score up. Payne Haas did play reduced minutes, which is again one of the reasons why I didn't want to go for him, I guess, coming into this week. Only played 46 minutes, but just the PPM is fantastic. 52 points, pretty much him and Madison equaled each other. So Payne Haas, I still think, will be a guy that you probably want to target for your front row forward for the round home, but it's a little bit tricky with, if you're buying him in round 18, he then has the bye in round, well, not the bye, but he'll miss round 19 with Origin, and then there's every chance at a rest potentially in round 20. So he feels like a guy, at least for me personally, probably will be a guy if I do want him, round 21 as a trade-in. But I think now that I didn't get him this week, I think he's probably going to be someone who I won't be able to get for the next few weeks thereafter. Outside of that, because of the tight nature of the game, only scoring 12 points, not really a lot of other big scores from some Broncos players here. Obviously, just very quickly on Reece Walsh, wasn't quite his game. I mean, he still looked somewhat good in attack, but just didn't quite work out for him today. So only the 26 points, no major attacking stats in there. This is really the only downside of Reece Walsh. If he doesn't get those big attacking stats, he will get these lower scores because he just doesn't have the base stats. But look, 26 points. Unfortunately, if you captained him this week as well, I thought it was a really good captaincy shout coming into this week, but it just wasn't to be. But if you bought Reece Walsh, I don't think you're selling at this point. Round 18 is a pretty good matchup as well. He's versing the Dolphins in round 18, has the bye in round 19, and if he does play round 20 after Origin 3, he's got the Bulldogs. So that will be a great game for Reece Walsh. So I do think that if you bought Walsh now, you probably just hold him, I think, for the next little period. Maybe if he misses round 20 as well, this is the difficulty. You know he's going to miss round 19, but you don't know about round 20. I'd be very scared selling Reece Walsh and then finding out he is playing against the Dogs. So he's probably someone I think you just hold now for the foreseeable future. So second last game of the round was the Rabbitohs taking on the Cowboys at home, and a pretty convincing win all in all for the Cowboys, winning 31 points to 6. Rabbitohs just seem to be a little bit off the boil. No Latrell Mitchell since round 12 obviously doesn't help, but losses against the Dragons. Conversely, you look at the Cowboys who've beaten now the Rabbitohs, the Panthers, the Storm recently. They look like they're getting back to their best and what we saw from them in 2021. So Cowboys players definitely someone or a team who I haven't really been considering. I mean, a few options from there have been like Val Holmes, but maybe a Reece Robson. Haven't really had a lot of other players in my own team, at least from the Cowboys. But Scotty Drinkwater is someone who, I was talking previously about fullbacks like Gutherson, Dylan Edwards, we talking about other fullbacks earlier like Gutherson, Dylan Edwards, Kennedy, Reece Walsh. I honestly completely forgot about Drinkwater and how good he's been killing it, because he's been on an absolute tear over the last few weeks. 139 today, had a few try assists, I think, a couple of line break assists in there. Just, he is one of the focal points of the Cowboys attack. So with the Cowboys obviously improving, that obviously means that Drinkwater is probably likely to be, amongst the points. And even when they haven't been that good, because he's such a focal point of their attack, he still seems to get the attacking points, even when the team only scores maybe say 1 or 2 tries. Like 95 last week against Penrith, 104, 117, 95, and 75 the other scores before today's 139. So he's been absolutely killing it. He will be very expensive. He had a break-even of 76 coming into this week. 845k he is. So he's going to be pushing 900,000, and that's probably the reason why I think he's only currently owned by 3% of teams. He's just such an expensive price. And also the Cowboys have had a lot of buys. They don't play round 19, but they do have the Tigers round 18. After that, we're looking at Manly, Parramatta, Titans, Broncos, and then another bye before they end up with the Sharks, Dolphins, and Penrith. So the draw is pretty decent after round 20. It gets a little bit tougher in the back end, but all in all, we've seen him get good scores against tough opposition. That 95 was against Penrith, 104 was against Melbourne, 117 was against Parramatta. He seems to be getting the scores in any case, even if it's a tough matchup. So if you've got the coin, to be honest, on form and the way that the team is kind of ramping up their form, Drinkwater could actually be the fullback answer that you want, but he's just going to be very expensive. So I'll be interested to see what Gutherson's price is after lockout, because I imagine the two of them could be similar in price. And if you're looking at a Gutherson with a buy in round 18, but Drinkwater with a buy in round 19, they kind of net each other off. It's really probably the price tag that's what's putting people off Drinkwater. Otherwise, I think he'd be in so many more teams. Serious pod, and he's been absolutely killing it, as I pointed out those other scores. Val Holmes, again, another guy who a lot of us sold in round 13. Since then, he's only played 2 games, but it's been 150 and it's been 89. This is the Val Holmes that we all started with at the beginning of the season, or what we hoped for at the beginning of the season, but we just weren't quite getting it. He is probably going to be a center wing I think you will want for the run home as well. He won't come cheap though, 708k, and he had a 28 break even coming into this week, so he's going to be around that 700k price tag when most of us are probably going to try to get him back in. So it's going to be a little bit difficult. Some tough decisions may have to be made in terms of some of the guys that we look to sell. But Val Holmes probably will be someone who does come into consideration, as does someone like a Nanai. I think he was coming in around 500k. Maybe he's a second or forward guy that you might want to have if you're upgrading like a Schuster or a Hosking. Don't expect him to be available for around 19 anyway. But look, after that for the run home, he might be someone that you can consider as well. We know that he is a bit rocks and diamonds. He does rely on those attacking stats. But if the Cowboys are going to continue to kind of improve their form or just keep piling on the points like they have the last couple of weeks, Nanai could definitely be a consideration as well as a second or forward who's at a pretty decent value at this point in time. Quick shout out as well to Tom Dearden, 89 points. He has had a couple of good games actually recently as well, Dearden. Just for some reason just doesn't feel like that from a Supercoach point of view. He's a guy that you can kind of rely on a week-to-week basis. But 118 the week before this week. But apart from that, 55, 21, 71, 35, 76. So he has got a season average of 54, but I think in a 5'8 spot, you're probably looking for guys like Munster. Look, I know Cody Walker only scored 42, not too great, but we know Cody's got the ceiling. Maybe a Ponga as well. I just feel like there are going to be better options at 5'8 than someone like a Dearden. Couple of other, I guess, notable things to call out here from the Cowboys game. We got someone like Reece Robson, 43 points. Could be something. He might start going back in value. Maybe you can pick him up on the discount. Maybe say the post-Origin period. Jason Taumalolo, I know there was a couple of questions about him coming into this week. He was ruled out with a hamstring injury. It looks like he's going to be out again for another maybe 2 to 4 weeks. So that kind of, I think, just with the nature of hamstrings, probably means he's not really going to be someone I think you'll consider really for the rest of the season, at least in my opinion. Just quickly moving over to the Rabbitohs side, they're really in a bit of a rut at the moment, just not looking great in attack. Obviously, the lack of Latrell is probably a big reason for that, and during the Origin period as well. Guys like Cam Murray, Damien Cook are backing up. Cam Murray played 64 minutes. That did include him having to go for a HIA. Damien Cook only played 53 minutes. It was named in the final game day team that Mamazoulis, I think that's how you pronounce it, went onto the bench for the Rabbitohs. So as soon as I saw that, I was like, there's no way that Cook's playing the full 80 minutes. I would have hoped for maybe 60, 65, 53 is not as good as I would have hoped for, but look, he did play the full 80 minutes in Origin and still scored 43 points in his 53 minutes, which is fine. Pretty good PPM. So, look, not the score that I would have hoped for, but it was fine. Alex Johnston, obviously no real major attacking stats apart from a line break, so he ended up on 46. Yeah, with AJ, look, he could be the guy that you sell potentially in round 20 when the Rabbitohs have a bye to someone like a Val Holmes. Because, with the Rabbitohs without Latrell, their attack's not looking fantastic. Now, with Latrell back in the team, that could mean good things for Johnston, so you could easily have him as a run-home guy as well. But, with that buy in round 20, I could see some people moving off him and in that particular week. Really no noticeable good scores here, I guess. Lachlan Ilias, top scoring with 63 points. Richie Kenner, 63. Pretty good, actually, if you did go him as a bit of a downgrade. He did have a negative break-even and a pretty solid score. On the Friday stream, I completely failed to mention him on the Tuesday stream, but when we got to Friday, I remembered about him. And I said, if you're going for a downgrade, I'll probably view him better than Valence Tavare, just purely for the negative break-even. And probably less of a future AE emergency. So I think he will be going up in price, obviously, with a negative 24 break-even, but he could still be at a pretty cheap price, and he could be worth potentially picking up as a downgrade in your center wing. Campbell Graham, solid 55. Same with Kalamatangi as well, 47. Both of those guys did have some interest coming into this week, but just the risk that they might both play game 3 is kind of what put me away, particularly from Kalamatangi as well. I was looking for a second or a forward, and he probably was going to be the one I would have preferred. But that game 3 risk it just meant I didn't want to go him, and I wanted to get someone who I thought would have a better chance of playing round 19, hence why I ended up going Ryan Madison. But really, not much else, I think, to pick up there from the Rabbitohs. Probably just means that maybe if we're holding on to guys like Walker and Johnston, without Latrell, we might not be expecting the great scores. Now, they do play the Bulldogs in round 19, which could be a great matchup, so I'm definitely holding until then. But whether I invest new in any Rabbitohs players while they're kind of in this rut, probably would mean I wouldn't quite go there at this stage. The final game of the round was the Raiders taking the win over the Roosters, 20 points to 18. Unfortunately, I am a Roosters fan, but when I did actually tip the Raiders. I just thought the Raiders coming in for bye, I know it feels bad to be tipping against my own team, but I'm tipping with my head. And look, I just thought the Roosters, the way that their attack has been poor, Raiders coming off a bye with a relatively unaffected Origin team, I just thought, they've actually shown really good form away from home this season. So they ended up taking the win mainly due to the first half, up 18-6 in the first half. And then obviously the Roosters scored a couple of tries, but Raiders were able to hang on in the end. Not really any massive scores out of the Raiders. To be honest, no real big scores out of this game in general. No one went above 100. Corey Horsburgh was the best performer for the Raiders, 78 points. We are definitely seeing him when he plays at that lock position. He played 69 minutes. He's getting about those 70 minutes in the middle, which is fantastic for his output. So he's been a really good, he was very popular maybe 5-6 weeks ago, but since then he's been kind of still continuing to deliver. I think a lot of people would have bought him for the round 13 coverage, and look, he's on the cusp of Origin, but game 3, look, if he misses round 19, obviously it's not fantastic given that the Raiders do play that week. But look, he's been a solid front row forward option, does have the dual status as well, so I still don't really see any major issues picking him up unless you're really concerned about round 19 coverage and you're concerned that maybe he misses with Origin. I think he's still delivering, and unfortunately also for the Raiders was that Josh Papali'i left the game fairly early with a hamstring injury. And they mentioned on the coverage that he was going to be out for probably the next couple of weeks before the Raiders bye in round 20. So it looks as though Papali'i will be back in round 21. So over the next couple of weeks, that is probably meaning good things again for the likes of a Joe Tarpany, who only played 51 minutes. Maybe his minutes step up a little bit. Corey will probably stay about the same at 69 minutes. I think without Papali'i, it probably benefits Tarpany more than Horsburgh, because I think Horsburgh's minutes are already pretty good. Tarpany might just get 2 or 3 extra minutes, which means, that 62 score that he scored today might bump up to like a 67 to 68 over the next 2 to 3 weeks. So I'm hopeful still as a Tarpany owner. 62 is solid. This is kind of more or less what he's been delivering all season, so nothing really, I guess, shocking with what Tarpany delivered. 62 points, fine. Minutes are a little bit lower than I would have hoped for, but it's kind of what we've been seeing so far this season. Albert Hopewati scoring a try as well. Jared Croker actually had a fairly decent game, goal kicking, but also had a hand in also Hopewati's try. On the Roosters side of things, just really, again, poor in attack. Like, they didn't score until the very last minute of the first half. Thankfully through Joey Manu, who I own, and Joey Manu also scored soon after in the second half, so ended up on 91 points. So really, really happy with that. They did always look, in my opinion, the best attack-wise, or most dangerous when they were trying to get Manu involved. And that, the number 6 experiment obviously hasn't worked, so I don't expect Manu to come back in the middle in 5'8", but if he plays at centre, and if they can kind of create this roaming role for him where he just is able to get his hands on the ball more, we know that's good things for Manu and SuperCoach, because it means more offloads, more tackle busts, more runs, all the good stuff that we like from Manu in SuperCoach. So happy with the 91 points today. A couple of tries involved there, a few tackle breaks and offloads as well. Lindsay Collins scoring a try, just riding the hot wave of form that he's shown through Origin, where he's been absolutely fantastic. Game 1, jumped over Tedesco. Again, Tedesco was out-leaped by Jack Whiten today, so Teddy just probably needs to keep working on his trampolining and jumping skills or whatnot, because he's getting out-jumped by props and 5'8" now, which isn't great news as a Roosters fan. And yeah, look, Teddy only the 34 points, not his best game. This is the thing. It feels very difficult to recommend buying Roosters attacking players when the overall attack is still not looking that good. So very, very hard to, I think, recommend buying any Roosters really in general. They don't play round 19 either, so I think you're kind of just holding on to what you've got. Manu's probably the guy. Maybe Dan Tupou. Didn't really have any major attacking stats, still ended up on 52, mainly through base. He is at a good price at 442k, so look, if you're looking for a cheap option, maybe if you just want to go up from Billy Smith to Tupou, that could be something you can do, but Billy Smith was okay himself, 42 points without any major attacking stats, that's fine. That's kind of his flaw, just doesn't seem to get those attacking stats, but I don't know, the way that Billy Smith's price is continuing to go down now, I feel like it's going to be hard for me to try to upgrade him. So I'm kind of maybe thinking I just park him as my 7th centre wing and just hope that the Roosters attack can maybe turn around for the back end of the season. And then at that point, maybe you can try to pick up hopefully a few good scores from Billy Smith, because his floor is still good. 42 points with no major attacking stats is fine. If you're able to upgrade him, I'd say it's probably fair to do so, especially in that round 19 bye week. I just mentioned Tupou and his price at 442k. Just thinking out loud, Sione Katoa, who's I think about 450k. The Sharks do have the Dragons next week, and then they've got the Tigers in round 19. I just think with Sharks not having no more buys for the rest of the season, I think they are a team who's relatively unaffected origin-wise and are very good in attack. To be honest, I think I'd probably take someone like a Katoa instead, just knowing that their team is probably scoring more points. And in particular, that matchup next week against the Dragons looks really good for a right winger. So I think Sione Katoa is probably someone I'd edge slightly over Tupou, and that might be something I do for as an initial trade plan next week. If I've got the funds, I may potentially go someone like a Billy Smith to like a Sione Katoa. That might be something that I do. Really though, I think not much more to touch on from the Roosters. Very hard to really recommend anyone to invest in, but a good solid win from the Raiders, who continued their good away form. So that's all the games summarized. So in terms of how I went this week, I ended up on 1142 points, which seemed about par. I did the averages from the Podmasters Cup, and the average score there was 1147, and it was about 1137 in the other Podmasters League. So I think if you've gotten around that 1150 mark, I think you've done fine this week. If you managed to crack the 1200, probably the guys who cracked the 1200 are the ones who maybe own someone like a Chancellor Klukstad. 1200 plus, I think you've had a great week. Par probably feels about that 1100, 1130 mark. And I think if you've got 1150 or above, I think you're fine for this week. So I'm sitting about 4,900 rank. I scored 1142. I'm not really expecting a massive jump, maybe a small one at that. Or it could just be a really, really small red. I'm not expecting to have a big moving week this week, which, look, to be honest, I'll take, because I was really short in my second row forward. And, I took the vice-captain loophole on SJ, so I was very happy with that. And, Gutherson did well for me. Just thinking out loud in terms of potential trades that I might do next week, I've mentioned Sione Katoa. I've actually just realized that looking at my team, someone like a Josh Schuster, via duels, I do have 81k in the bank as well. Josh Schuster to Sione Katoa, switching Jack Howarth back up to my second row forward. That could be a trade that I could do to kind of get out of Josh Schuster and to maybe capitalize on a juicy matchup next week for the Sharks winger. That could be something I could do. I've just thought of out loud. Aside from that, we'll get, obviously, Eels are on the bye in around 18, so I won't have any cover for. Well, I'll have Ruben Garrick as cover for Gutherson, and I won't have Ryan Madison. So, and I'm not counting Matt Dury anyway. So I've only got the 2 Eels players out next week. So I think next week should be fine for numbers. So I think most of you should be in the same boat as well. I guess the question is, if you're a Mitchell Moses owner, what you might want to do with him. But that will be something that we will tackle coming into round 18. So hope you all enjoyed the video. Again, apologies I couldn't do a live stream, just a few personal commitments and things got in the way. So hopefully you find the video recorded version still as helpful. If you did if you were interested, hair is still looking fine, so no need to worry about that. No different from the live stream or the recorded videos. Hair is still looking okay. But hopefully you all enjoyed that. Do please give the video a like if you did enjoy it. I'll see you all again later in the week. Leave any questions in the comments below, and catch you in the next one. See ya.